trainer here within Microsoft.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rodanthi Alexiou. I'm from Greece. I'm a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, and we're very excited to have you here with us in this session, and we can't wait to start right away. So, if you're new to Microsoft Learn, it's a free online platform providing detailed guidelines on about any Microsoft technology topic, offering more than 2,000 modules in meantime. I have used it myself for different topics, and I loved it. So what we are going to talk about today in our session with Peter will also be available as a learning module as well. So you can see this in the short link, you can see in your screens, and when you click it, you can land right into it.
Cool. And Rodanthi, I think we also need to mention that on the Learn platform, it's not just about reading modules like the one we're using, and I'll show you in a minute what it looks like on the platform, but it also contains video-based training content from snackable videos, a couple of minutes to sometimes 30 minutes to 45 minutes on a specific topic. And next to that, you also have the opportunity to find real-life exercises where you don't even always need an Azure subscription yourself. Now, I can talk about it, but why not even just showing you what it looks like?
And this interactive way, it's incredible. It's really useful when you want to learn something new. So if you haven't checked it out yet, check it out.
Just trying to get my browser open.
Okay.
I told you how hard can it be, but it can actually be pretty challenging. So the short link is aka.ms/learn. And from here, initially, it's going to ask you for your credentials. You only need a Microsoft account or the Live ID, as we used to call it. And from there, you can access, what did you say, like more than 2,000 different Learn modules?
Yeah.
That's actually quite amazing. Now, since we're talking about monitoring, I'm obviously not going to show you the actual module. We're going to use that would spoil the fun a little bit for the next 90 minutes. But just to give you some idea about how the platform works. So you could start searching for any topic around monitoring. You can immediately see how much we have available. And I started learning something about Azure Monitoring, obviously just to show you. But you could start clicking around, and whenever you see an option that refers to an exercise, that's where you need to go through an online hands-on step-by-step scenario. Obviously, the idea is that before you read all the content to know what you actually are supposed to be doing. And from here, you can literally follow along. Every now and then, you need to have your own Azure subscription. If you don't have one, the Azure free account is probably one of the best options to get started. In some other exercises, it all depends on the exercise itself. You can also open a sandbox where you don't even need to use your free account. So just wanted to show you how useful it can be.
Mm-hmm. Great. So back to our today's session. So while you probably know that the core topic of our session, the best to get the best learning experience out of it is to be familiar with cloud computing and also know the difference between Azure infrastructure, IaaS platform, PaaS, PaaS or serviceless services, and have some understanding of cloud resource provisioning.
So we already mentioned the Microsoft Learn platform, and I think it makes sense to tell you that it's not just like click around, go through, read some stuff and get happy. It's always about learning something. So even today's session, as you already know, it's based on a Learn module. So the learning objectives specifically for today is helping you in understanding monitoring. So first of all, what is the reason why we have monitoring? Next to that, obviously discussing the different capabilities in the platform, how to read out the health state of your services you're running on the platform, and even hybrid outside of Azure, and explaining you a little bit on the technical side, and hopefully we can show you a couple of demos to do that.
And as you mentioned, Peter, so monitoring is only possible by gathering data. So this is typically through logs. We're going to talk about it in a while. But even more important is to interpret the outcome and take the correct measures, which is also another learning objective that we're going to tackle this session. And one thing that we didn't share yet, and it's important to share with all of you, is that this Learn module is provided in partnership with Carnegie Mellon University.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. With that, we're pretty close to the agenda, and I think it totally makes sense that monitoring is important, and monitoring could be quite complex. So we're going to try to take away some of the complexity, but still giving you some wow effect about how the monitoring could help you in identifying different characteristics of your environment, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, virtual machines, serverless, and everything in between if you want. And talking about the use cases, and again, back to some of the demos where you can find the different monitoring characteristics using metrics, indicators, trying to find some correlation. But if all those terminology doesn't make any sense to you yet, I would say hold on tight, and we're going to walk you through, and hopefully by the end of the session, it should all be common knowledge to you.
Great, and don't forget that our expert moderators are standing by to answer any of your questions, and Peter and I will also answer some of them live here with you. So just go to Learn TV and ask us anything, give us any feedback if you wish. And if you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, head over to Learn TV and then join the chat and ask us anything. And so I think there are going to be some polls there for you, for those who are already in the Learn TV. So there are some questions that we want you to answer to get to know you better. Until you answer the questions, let's just share a little bit about our roles with Peter. So for example, I'm a Microsoft Learn student ambassador, and the Microsoft Learn student ambassador community is a great place to learn new things about technology, be part of projects with students from all around the world, and get to know them by sharing our common passion for technology. And Peter is an Azure technical trainer within Microsoft. So Peter, can you share us a little bit about this role?
Oh, sure. Well, I think first of all, it's probably one of the easiest and most easy understandable job roles within Microsoft ever. So an Azure technical trainer is literally providing Azure technical training. I mean, how hard can it be? Now, what it means is that it's in Microsoft terms, still a pretty small team. We're close to 180 trainers, I think, worldwide. Mm-hmm. And we provide weekly workshops to our top customers and partners on anything that's related to Azure based on the Microsoft official courseware, helping them scaling up on the platform, obviously, first of all, knowing what it's all about, but also helping them preparing for the certification. And by the way, if you got any questions, I know Rodanthi mentioned it already, but I would say make use of the chat if you got any questions on the topic. It might even be a little bit broader on Azure. Feel free to let us know, and more than happy to help you out.
Right. So we can see, I can see that most of you watching us live are students, but we have also some professional developers and some teachers, professors, or educators. But you can also, if you are now joined us, head over to Learn TV and answer the polls or ask us anything. So there's also another question I think you can answer us if you have ever learned Microsoft, if you ever used Microsoft Learn, and if you haven't, please use it. It's a great tool, a great learning platform.
I would say for the ones who already used it, maybe shout out in the chat box to influence some of the ones who didn't use it yet. Obviously, we can recommend it, but it's our own bread and butter, so it wouldn't be sad if we would not recommend it. But it's a great tool. You know what I'm doing as a day-to-day job, and literally there, I'm using the Learn platform as well to provide additional exercises, provide additional content for the attendees in the trainings who are not always finding the correct information they're looking for, and they're overall amazed. So let me know later on how many of you are already using it, I would say. So I think with that, it's about ready. And first of all, thanks for the participation in the poll. I know it's all virtual, it's still live, but that's why we're using the poll to at least get some view about our audience. And if we need to adapt to something or back to the questions, that's the main benefit for having live presenters and not just talking to a recorded session. Even if you're watching this later on as a recorded session, you can find us on social media and still get your questions fired up from there. So let's move on, I would say, with the core topic of today, introducing you to the interesting world of monitoring your cloud environment. Now, super high level, I know it's only like technical slide number 1, but when you ask me about monitoring, my answer is always the same. You cannot manage your environment, whether it's cloud, whether it's on-prem, whether it's hybrid, using different cloud scenarios together, mixing in your on-prem scenarios, but you cannot manage them properly if you're not monitoring them. If you have no idea what's going on, there's no way you can adapt to it. So if you think about cloud computing today, the easy story is that it's high available, it's redundant, it's scalable, and a lot of other buzzwords that I'm quite sure you probably already heard about, but none of that would be possible without monitoring. And yes, the cloud provider, in our case, Microsoft, is obviously providing monitoring. But on the other side, whenever you're going to deploy your own workloads, it also means that you need to take responsibility and monitoring them as well. Now, monitoring itself can be achieved by a lot of different things. It could be sending a ping request to validate if your server is still live. It could be checking your website. If you run a web application, you want to check every second, every 5 seconds, if the website is still live. But it could also go in from the network level all the way up to the application level and pretty much anything in between. And it wouldn't be, like I would say, reasonable to assume that any human being is going to watch your cloud environment, depending a bit on the size and the complexity. But even in a small, medium-sized environment, you still need to monitor. And back to the statement, there's no way you can manage your environment if you're not properly monitoring it.
And I think Peter made it very clear why monitoring is important. But let's emphasize in some aspects a little bit more in detail. So for an information system to be manageable, it must be monitored. So the greater the complexity of a system, the more important it is to assess its operational status in real time or in near real time, and in quantitative manner with numbers, values, and percentages. And monitoring comes down to 3 main components as instrumentation: logs, metrics, and traces. And Peter and I will discuss more about it right away. So probably we're all familiar with log files. It contains a listing or logging of data relating to what happened on a machine, in an application, or in a database. So some examples, think of syslogging on a Linux virtual machine, showing CPU, memory, and other metrics, or an event viewer on Windows Server, showing all logged information from the operating system itself all the way up to the application level. And no matter the logging system or scenario, logs should help with 3 main things: with correlation, which means bringing data together to help you make decisions; with normalization, which is detecting what is an acceptable or typical behavior of a system, and of course reporting, so presenting the data in clearly understandable views, that could be dashboards or docs.
Cool. And I'm quite sure we can show you a lot more later on throughout the session what the terminology stands for and how you can use it. Now, Rodanthi mentioned logs, metrics, and traces. So logs, I think, is hopefully understandable by now. It's typically capturing what happened with your machine, like in the near past time, or maybe a longer time ago. And it could be a compliance reason. It could be just for having technical logging about what's going on with your environment. But the second item that could help you in providing decent monitoring are the metrics. Now, metrics are typically used for real-time information, and you could think about like a real-life dashboard showing you CPU load, showing you memory consumption, network traffic. If you open up a firewall, it will present you some nice views on the real-life state of your attacks that might happen, or if you just want to find out how your workload is running, that could also come in using live metrics. Now, obviously, I'm not going to read out everything that's here on the slide, but if you would ask me, like, what are the key metrics or the key characteristics of metrics that we look for, I would like to pick up like 2 examples. The first one is probably the request queue volume. If you know what a queue is, it's like waiting in line to get food, or maybe going to an amusement park, or maybe visiting an e-commerce platform could be another example. And the larger the queue becomes, like the queue volume is going up, it typically means that your system, the application front end, maybe the back end, is slowing down. So that could be an interesting indicator to figure out how healthy your server is running. Another example is user sentiment, something that honestly I never really thought of as an end user. But if you used tools like WhatsApp, Teams, Zoom, any of the popular social media platforms, allowing you to collaborate with your friends, and specifically in the virtual world we're living in today. And maybe you didn't really notice, and I never really noticed myself, but in a lot of cases, when you close the call, it's going to ask you like a star rating, where you could go, it's a 1 star, typically meaning that the performance wasn't that good, or maybe the call got disconnected, where the 5-star rating means everything has been working fine, video quality is good, sound quality is good. Now, this could be moved back into a technical metric, where if you receive a lot of like 0 stars or maybe 1 stars, you could probably find out that your system is not behaving as it should be. So using customer and user feedback to influence your technical decisions on the platform.
Yeah, and after Peter talked about metrics and we talk about logs, there's also a third component of reportness, which is traces, which is similar to logs and metrics, but it is slightly different in scope. So tracing is typically used when an application architecture becomes more complex in nature, where relying on standalone logs and metrics will not always help in getting a clear view on the overall health state of a workload. So think of a complex cloud architecture like comprising IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, or application architecture spread in a hybrid nature across on-premises data centers and public cloud, or even microservices architectures like Kubernetes that we're also going to talk about it in the in our session, and also do a quick demo about it. Mm-hmm. But we've finished our first section, so let's do a quick knowledge check to see if everybody's still on track. And keep in mind, you can ask us anything on Learn TV, or give us any feedback.
Great. So should I read out the first question, or you want to take it?
We also have, I can see now, we also have another question for after this question, we can discuss about it. So this question first. So we have a scenario, users are complaining that a website you deploy to the cloud has suddenly become very slow. Which of the following metrics might be helpful to you in resolving the problem? So what do you think, Peter? I think maybe the correct answer, I don't know what the audience thinks, but maybe it's between B and C.
Let's see. Well, bounce rate to me feels like somebody's trying to visit the website and immediately leaving, so it's not even giving them the chance to figure out if it's a normal performance or slow. So I wouldn't personally not go for A. B and C seems reasonable.
Yeah,
and the number of pages, yeah, that to me would feel like they're actually not having any real issues because they're still visiting the website. I'll leave it up to you. You can choose B or C.
I'm gonna go with B because you talked about it when you talked about metrics, and D is definitely not it because I think it indicates a user behavior than an indication that a site is slow. So I'm gonna go with B, and I hope I'm right.
Cool. Can you let me know what the audience came back with before I expose the answer?
Let me see, check it, if we have any. All right, so yes, most of the audience answered B, and there was the battle was between B and C. So yeah, 57 of them percent preferred B.
Okay, nice. Looks like they got access to your brain. It's probably the virtual world we're in.
Yeah.
But indeed, the correct answer was B, partly, obviously, because I talked about it already. But next to that, for the ones who didn't pick the correct answer, so the reasoning is that the length of time, so the longer or the larger the queue becomes, it typically means that the server is slowing down. So that would be one of the key metrics to look out for. We got a few more questions coming up, so don't get sad if you had this one wrong. Pay a little bit more attention, I could say, and hopefully some other demos that we got coming up should help you in answering some other questions. Now, you told me that we have another question from the audience. Okay, cool.
Sure. So one of our viewers asked, so are unmonitored cloud environments considered safe? If not, what can users do to maintain system integrity and security?
Okay, that's a real interesting question. So are cloud environments safe? I'm quite confident to say yes, and not just talking about Azure, but I think any public cloud or hybrid cloud scenario today can be seen as safe. Now, like in any other data center scenario, it's always shared responsibilities. Out of like Azure, for example, we provide you the platform capabilities, but if you deploy your servers, but you're not going to monitor them, and something happens, then obviously we're not really going to tell you. Depending if you use IaaS or building your own virtual machines, it means that you're more responsible for keeping the workloads live than if you, for example, move to a serverless component, or if you would use a platform service like a load balancer, but not deploying the virtual machine yourself. So is it safe? Definitely. Is it blocking you from using it? Is it having any challenges? I would say check out the monitoring. We got a couple of other demos coming up, and that should give you some more confidence about the data we're exposing, how we're handling some of the compliance. If you have specific requirements without knowing any specific business vertical you're in, I'm quite sure that we can handle them as well. And keep those questions coming, by the way. We love them. We do have a few ones to challenge our audience to see if you're still paying attention and understanding what we're talking about, but we love seeing questions coming in from the audience as well.
Great. Okay, so we finished the first quick knowledge check. We also had another question from the audience. Okay, now let's go and talk a little bit more about monitoring platform characteristics and followed by some live demos in the Azure portal. Um, Monitoring platforms generally fall into two categories, those who are agent-based and those who are not. While most cloud services provide agentless monitoring capabilities, especially in PaaS and SaaS, by deploying an agent, more detailed information can be retrieved from a system. And agents are also often used in an infrastructure as a service scenario, like Azure VM, or in hybrid scenarios where you want to port logs from an on-premises running system into Azure Monitor. And sometimes an agent is just acting as a proxy or gateway services to move logging to a centralized data repository. In other scenarios, it provides additional health state validation. And so we know that there are two categories. Let's discuss a little bit more about agentless monitoring option first. So the previously described scenarios of metrics and logs were good examples of agentless scenarios. We didn't need to deploy any agent to get information, but out of the logs and metrics, we still get feedback on failures, application performance, and overall health state of the application. And cool. So, okay, so to take it even in more detailed level, agentless monitoring platforms provide insights on the following: on performed activity, on identity information, on information about the involved component or object, about timestamp when the activity took place, and the outcome of the activity.
Awesome.
And I think now it's time for a demo that we have prepared for you, and we also need your involvement from the audience live, right, Peter?
Yes, so we're gonna try something interesting. I told you we like some kind of interaction in the online world. So I just need a little bit of time before I can kick off my little game. So what we're gonna do is playing a little game where my mouse is also trying to play a little game. That's not at all the intention, but let's use my fallback plan. You're gonna hear some clicks. My apologies for that. I'll try to fix that later on. But so what we're gonna do is pulling you into a little game. It's called Tug of War. It's typically like a US and UK terminology for a game that we in Belgium, we describe it as rope pulling. So easy said, you got two different teams, and based on the power, the force they have, you're gonna try and drag the other team over the center point. So obviously we don't have any ropes whatsoever, but we can play a little game. For the techies in the audience, it's based on Azure Functions. It's a serverless component, and it's probably one of the best targets to discuss the agentless monitoring, because we don't have any virtual machines. We don't have an operating system on which we can deploy an agent, but it doesn't mean that we cannot monitor what's going on with our environment. So we're almost there. And I need to come up with two teams. Let's see what we're gonna do. Something with Belgium and Greek. Yeah, something Greek. Let's do food. What's your favorite food?
Well, let's go with something Greek. Let's go with feta cheese, Greek feta. That's something really Greek.
Awesome, I love it. And I'm gonna challenge you with fries. I know the whole world talks about French fries, but honestly, they're Belgian fries. But Belgium as a country didn't exist yet at that time. But we're all quite clear that it's, or let's do Belgian waffles. Why not? Good. The game is live. It's waiting for players. So anyone in the audience, pull up your phones, go to the short link, aka.ms/pdtwar, or use the QR tag. If you don't have a mobile device close to you, you can obviously use it from the browser as well. And it's going to present you the two different teams. So I would say don't try to cheat and switch from one team to the other. Stick to the same team and try to hammer the buttons as fast and as hard as possible. And the numbers are going up.
Great. Come on, Greek feta is everything.
Is it a spicy cheese? Is it a super soft one? You got different flavors.
It's not a spice cheese. It's Greek feta. There is no explanation. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's winning also. So
yeah, apparently looks like it. Even I admitted that I like Greek feta, so it somehow made sense. Cool, but obviously it's not about the game. It's about finding out like how is my backend running. So the first service we're going to use is Application Insights. Application Insights is our agentless solution from where you can monitor what's going on in the back of the platform. Now it starts with some high-level views. And again, it's all slowing down a little bit because my mouse is not moving as it should be. So I can see from the last 30 minutes how my system backend is behaving. Now this is quite basic, so let's drill down on some more detailed views. And as a system platform owner, maybe as a developer, you want to find out like what's my overall performance. Now, without doing anything, this is a pre-built dashboard we offer out of Application Insights. It's going to show you a lot of different details. So let's see if I can move this a little bit. So you can see server response. It's less than 2 seconds. Again, it's running Azure Functions, which means that depending on how many users were playing, if you paid attention to the dashboard, down here we started with 6. And now since nobody's playing anymore, there's a little bit of a cooldown. It's going to still keep the game live. I could immediately start a new game, but we don't have the time to do that, unfortunately. But you could also see that cooldown moment. At the same time, if I'll move it down a little bit, I can read out different information from the different metrics. So server exceptions here in the middle is going to show me the exact same details as the average processor. Now, this is not the only information we have. So let's drill down and validate what our application looks like. Now, this is a pretty basic diagram. So technically, I'm using Azure Functions connecting to Azure Table Storage, Queue Storage, and finally storing the endpoint, like the winning team, in Azure Blob Storage. Without doing anything, it's going to show you real-time information about the number of instances. And if you want to have a trend analysis over X amount of time, let's say you know that on average, you got X amount of milliseconds, and the last 4 hours, it was going up or maybe slowing down a little bit. You can drill down, selecting the options, view the details, and reading out performance. So it's going to show you some pre-configured statistics. You click through and it's going to highlight your overall performance all the way up to the split second. All this information and a lot more application insights without deploying any agents. And thanks to the audience for participating. Without your involvement, there wouldn't be anything to demo. So thanks for supporting the live demos we try to do here. Now, the next topic obviously is agent-based deployment. So agentless, quite obvious, you don't need to deploy anything. You pick up the metrics, you pick up the log files, and you can start reading out how your system is behaving. Now, in case of an agent-based monitoring component, it obviously means that you need to install an agent. So the model is typically used in hybrid scenarios, or even already starting in cloud-only scenarios, where you manage the virtual machines. allowing you to deploy that agent. It's really that obvious. Another scenario is hybrid, where you might have your on-prem data center, and I hope and at least that you're monitoring that one already. But at some point in your migration to the cloud scenario, you might figure out, like, what do I need to do with my monitoring? Am I going to keep my monitoring data on-prem using my traditional monitoring tools, or am I going to move to a cloud-based scenario? So one of the options you have with Azure Monitor is deploying an agent towards your on-prem running systems, or hybrid. It doesn't need to be on-prem, could be in another cloud scenario, and still centralizing all the logging data in your Azure monitoring capability. So one example I want to talk about a little bit more, and actually not really talking about it, but showing you, is Network Watch. So back to the portal, let's see if the mouse is responding again. Way cool. So what is Network Watcher? It's another built-in service in the platform where, using the service itself, just gonna make it a bit smaller. So using the service itself is quite straightforward. You enable Network Watcher, and actually whenever you use any network component in the platform, let's say you're running a virtual machine, it's automatically enabling the service for you. The service itself is active per region, like pretty much anything else in the platform. Now from here, you can run a couple of different network diagnostic tools. IP flow verify, validating your IP stream, the network security groups like the built-in software firewall, finding out a next hop, or another option, and that's most interesting for the network experts or network sysadmins in the audience, is packet capture. Now, I've been running data centers, or at least providing data center support for about 25 years, started summer 96, long time ago already. In the traditional physical world, we didn't even know what cloud was because it didn't exist at all at that time. I'm not even sure if we had internet, probably not as popular as it was today. Long time ago, not even important. But there's still one tool that I really loved about network troubleshooting. Why is my virtual machine web server not connecting to my database backend server? And that was Wireshark. It's a free tool, not provided by Microsoft, but what we did with Network Watcher Packet Capture is providing you a similar scenario. Now there's a whole technical detail to get Wireshark running in your on-prem scenarios, and we try to simplify it a little bit. So what you can do here is running a manual capture, or you could also run it as a scheduled task where it's going to create a log file. And since Rodanthi talked about log files, you know what it means. Now, interesting here is that it allows you to capture the log file in an Azure storage account. The other option is moving into a file or using the two options in combination. Now, just a little real life experience. When I see file connecting to a virtual machine, it means that I want to store this on my local machine, right? Now, what Network Watcher is doing is capturing that log file inside the virtual machine you're monitoring. And it doesn't always make a lot of sense to me. I get it why we're doing it. It's easy because you're troubleshooting the virtual machine. But what if the network is blocking you from reaching the VM? It means that you cannot get that virtual machine file because the VM is not available anymore. So I would say at least a storage account, if possible, maybe use the two options in combination. From here, you can define some specifics, like how long is my capture running? The default is 18,000 seconds. I'm pretty bad in math, so I have no idea how many minutes it's running, but I think it's close to 5 minutes or so. You could also define a maximum size for the log file. Now, to speed up the demo a little bit, I ran a capture for a web virtual machine that I'm running over here. And you can see the web VM is running. So what I did is, out of my deployments, manual, you could automate it, is moving to extensions. Where are my extensions? Up here. And you can see that I'm running the Network Watcher agent up here. There's an agent for Windows, an agent for Linux, And that's our statement where it's agent-based. So let's go back to the outcome of the network capture. One step back. It's faster if I go from here, I guess. I'm using too much stuff in my portal, so apologies for that. So it's stored in Azure Storage, which means you can connect to it if you do have the correct permissions. I'm managing my own subscription, so I do have access. You can share it together with access keys to the storage. And since I'm the sysadmin in my environment, it allows me to download the file. It shouldn't be that large, so I hope it's going quite fast. There we go. And since I talked about Wireshark, you don't have to use it. We provide an Azure capture reading tool, but why not using the same tool as the one I've been using for the last 20-something years? And again, it's not about the capture itself, but it should give you some idea about how you could use this for troubleshooting, or maybe not even troubleshooting, but finding out like what's going on the network layer within my virtual machine.
Great. So before I jump in with another quick demo that I have in mind, there is a question in the chat considering a Network Watcher. The question is there a cost related to using Network Watcher? So, I mean, you can go, for anyone who has the same question, you can go to azure.microsoft.com/pricing for all the details. But I think, if I'm not wrong, Peter, that you pay for the amount of data your Network Watcher is collecting per month. So the first 5 GB is free, but then from there you should pay some dollars or euros per month for more. But go check the website and yeah, for more details. And if you have any other questions, just ask us. But now, can you, Peter, go back to the Azure portal to show you something?
You want more demos? I love doing demos. So
yeah,
tell me.
It's a quick demo. So if you go to the virtual machine view in Azure, so yeah, great. And if you select we have some examples, the SQL VM that we have there, great. So in the diagnostics setting, which is somewhere, great, yeah. All right, yes. As you can see in your screen, the Azure Monitoring collects host-level metrics like CPU utilization and disk and network usage for all virtual machines without any additional software. But if you want more insight into the virtual machine, you can collect guest-level metrics, logs, and other diagnostic data using an agent, an Azure Diagnostic Agent that we can install now. But we already have one installed in another VM right there. So if we go to the web VM right there, yes, the agent must be installed.
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, and we can see, you know, the select performance counters and logs and see all these new things now that we have installed an agent, an Azure Diagnostic Agent. And also, quick fact that if an agent is not responding, so for some reason, if for example, if the virtual machine is down, we still can retrieve the information because of the agent integration, storing monitoring logs and metrics to storage account. So that's something
awesome.
Yeah, something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and it's going all the way to like application logging, so that typical Windows event viewer. But it's always been a challenge, like how am I going to handle it? Because probably nobody's reading log files unless something is wrong, right? I mean, what's the point in going through log files if you know that everything is fine with your machine? Where now from here, I was amazed that it's not just showing me the low level performance counters, but it's also capable of inspecting like what's running inside that virtual machine, which explains why we deploy that agent. Nice, I love it.
Okay, we can explore a new demo, but first let's see a few things first. So we've already briefly touched on the usage of traces, meaning performing monitoring in case of more complex architecture like microservices such as Kubernetes. So this kind of architecture typically depends on both agentless and agent-based monitoring. Interesting enough, to monitor an Azure Kubernetes service, which is used to run huge amounts of containers. Kubernetes relies on system containers that provide monitoring, and also the AKS team put a lot of effort and managed to take the monitoring aspects of Kubernetes and make it more Azure-like, if you want, Azure-like. So you have the same user experience for monitoring Kubernetes than if you monitor any other Azure service. Otherwise, you will have to use a native tool like Prometheus, but now you don't have to. It's the AKS team has created something new and something more easy for you. And we can also see that in a quick demo to see that come to life. So Peter, if you can go to your portal, great, and you can go to the AKS blade and then select. We can select the Kubernetes resources. Mm-hmm. All right, so okay, so we are here. You can find all the important information about your AKS building blocks right there, starting from the highest level namespaces down to storage and configuration of the Kubernetes cluster. And if we open the workloads,
yeah. Okay, that's down here.
Great. We can see when it's loading, we can see the difference between system containers and custom application services. For each component, as we can see, as Peter shows us, that we can see for each component the health state and the age of the POD, and most PODs are high available, as we can see also in our screen. But something is wrong with a particular one, and you can guess what that is exactly, because there is a red warning sign. So, Peter, can you explain us why is this happening? Why there is a warning?
Up till now, I have no immediate idea, but let's check it out. So let me open the not running container, and all 5 of them are having issues. Oh, but I can see here. It's telling me image pull back off. It's a little bit cryptic, but this is quite amazing, because what I know about Kubernetes is that it's all driven by kube control, like a command line tool, together with that Prometheus dashboarding monitoring tool. Now, next to Prometheus, you also need Grafana, because Prometheus is like capturing the metrics and logging information, but there is no presentation layer. So that's where Grafana, it's another monitoring tool that you typically see in a Kubernetes container world scenario. But right now, like you showed me, I could just select my cluster, go to the workloads, selecting the services. And up till this level, you need to know a little bit more about container error messages, where the image pull back off is typically pointing at the source where your container image is located, that it cannot reach it. Now, we don't have time to troubleshoot, like, why is this not working? But at least it's going to show me right away, everything's up and running, the system is healthy, other application containers are healthy, and this one is not working as it should be. And I can see YAML down here. That's the configuration scripting language, if you want, for container environments, where you can also look at it as a log file, where you can find out like what's going on. When is my container created? So apparently it's been trying for a couple of days already. And I can also identify where I can find my container resource. And I didn't specify the container registry credentials. I'm not an expert on YAML files, so that explains why my containers are not starting up. But we talked about networking, so I saw something else that's actually quite interesting here. Because networking in container environments like a Kubernetes cluster is pretty challenging. But what I noticed here when you showed me the service level is my running containers up here are running behind the load balancer. So they tell me it's internet facing. I can see the internal IP within the cluster for the troubleshooting if needed. And it also picks up a public IP address. So why not testing if the cluster is actually live and the pods are running? Look like it's there. And I think my response is quite cool, which is obviously a core behavior of running containers. So I think it's a successful, pretty cool, successful monitoring product. Let me switch back. Is there anything else you wanted to show us? Maybe a question from the audience on this level, or good to go?
There is a question
Awesome.
from the audience. So the question is package capture only agent-based monitoring? Is there any equivalent for agentless monitoring?
Back to the network watcher. So yeah, the initial dependency, like I showed you, is agent-based, where you're going to capture the virtual machine information. But there is also another part that's actually agentless. And let's see if I can show you. First, gonna close this to not consume too much memory, but let me go back to Network Watcher. And the agentless component you can use here is Network Performance Monitor. Now, what it allows you to do is drilling down on the network level. You could even, something we didn't really talk about yet, but you could also run this across multiple subscriptions, obviously assuming that you do have the correct permissions to do so. But from here and again, for network admins, this would be pretty mind-blowing if you ask me. It's awesome that a question came up because I actually forgot about it. But from here, I could almost talk 90 minutes about Network Watcher itself, but we got so much else to cover still. But I just want to show you this dashboard where you can see like what's going on with your environment, how many platform network components are having issues, running unhealthy and healthy. And if you want to drill down, it's going to show you a lot more details about packet loss. So pretty basic example, managing your network, ExpressRoute, VPN, VNet, subnet communication, all coming back without deploying any agent whatsoever. Thanks for the question, by the way. If it's fine, I'm going to move on, if that's okay, to talk a little bit more about the challenge of monitoring I talked about in the beginning, because we talked about agent-based, agentless. We started with the network layer. We used application insights to show you the other end where you cannot deploy the agent, but still getting a lot of details. Now, the main tool in Azure, although we are talking about different standalone products like Network Watcher, App Insights, and a couple of other ones coming up, but they're all centralized in Azure Monitor. Now, Azure Monitor is known as an application platform monitoring or platform management tool. And it's literally the go-to scenario to get a view on everything that's running in the platform. Anyone who's familiar with AWS, you might know Amazon CloudWatch. It's the exact same concept. It's known as an APM, application platform monitoring management capability. Obviously, I'm not going to talk too much about Amazon AWS, but know that CloudWatch is their product to do similar things. Now, briefly on the integration aspect of Azure Monitor. So first of all, it's tenant-based. So I showed you Network Watcher across different subscriptions, but it's still living in the same tenant, which is the highest level in an Azure organizational model. If you have multiple subscriptions like I showed you, that's perfectly fine. It allows you to monitor Azure resources. We already showed you some demos, and we got a few more ones coming up. It allows you not just monitoring the Azure layer of the platform, the virtual machine stack that you're not managing, but also inside the operating system, all the way up to the application. The intelligence of Azure Monitor is based on what we started with at the beginning, collecting metrics, the real-time values, and integrating with log files. Could be real-time, could be near real-time, could be longer-term retention. From there, capturing, gathering all the data, and from there we're going to start using it for getting insights. Remember my personal statement, you cannot manage your environment if you're not monitoring it. Using application insights, containers like we showed you, the virtual machine layer, and a lot of other components. We're going to talk about the presentation layer. Already showed you some dashboard intelligence. If you don't like the Azure dashboards, or maybe you want to share technical information, but not always the technical details with the business stakeholders who are not really interested in like how healthy your platform is running, but maybe just getting a view on SLAs. Why not moving information from Azure Monitor into Power BI? Or moving to log analytics, where you can run running analysis on top of your gathered metrics and logging. And from there, moving to a proactive scenario. When something happens, when there's an alert coming in, when there's a specific metric fired up, we could also trigger alerts and integrating with other Azure services, running Azure automation, kicking off a function, deploying Azure templates. And apart from this, you could also integrate it with other cloud environments. I mentioned AWS CloudWatch, but nothing blocks you from moving information out of AWS into Azure Monitor, from on-prem into Azure Monitor, and using it as an end-to-end cloud hybrid scenario for your monitoring capabilities. So I talked about it, but you already know that we do like showing you stuff, how it's working. So let me switch to another demo. And let's find Azure Monitor. There we go. So up here, the high level, what I just talked about in the diagram. So we have the alerts. We'll show you some capabilities later on. We have metrics, we have logs. That's what we already talked about. So let's start with that. And the metrics, again, it's typically some value, like a CPU, memory state, disk read-write operations, or so many other ones you could find in your platform. So again, based on subscription within the same tenant, you could filter based on the resource types. You could filter on a location. Maybe you're not interested in anything happening in Europe if your workloads are mainly running in the US and the US customers are complaining about performance. For example, that would be the idea. So let's go back to our e-commerce environment. And from here, I want to read out my virtual machines in that specific location. Should be good enough. So that's my base filter. And from here, it's showing me specific parameters, specific metrics for this kind of resource. If I would add a new metric and I want to read out storage, just selecting any storage account, not that important, but just showing you how dynamic the metrics are following. It also allowing you to read out specific metrics on this level. We talked about logs. So what you can do here is reading out logging information, having pointers to a lot of different services that we already talked about, applications, containers, network layer, the virtual machines. And I think, Rodanthi, you showed me something last week around log analytics, running some queries.
Yeah, there is, and I want you to explain to also to the audience a little bit more about a more, for example, if I want a more detailed view on a complex scenario. So, for example, if we want to get the list of all virtual machines running as a web server, having and saying that I have Windows 2012 R2 as an operating system, and I want to read out the health state. Or that is an example. Or another example is if I want to read out failures like you showed earlier in application insights, but for virtual machines or maybe VM workloads running on premises. Is that possible to get that kind of data?
Oh, like, yeah, somehow going back to the correlation part you talked about, like, yeah, I get it. So you think it's a little bit too static, like I want to monitor virtual machines, so I'm going to open up Azure Monitor, I select virtual machines, reading out the details, but I want to filter it a bit on Windows operating system, the ones having issues and so on. So that's where log analytics comes in. It allows you to literally run powerful queries based on custom query language. It looks like a SQL or T-SQL language, but it's slightly different. But if you do have some query building knowledge, it shouldn't all be that hard to start building your own custom queries and filtering, finding all the information you're specifically looking for. Now, you gave me a pretty nice example, but why not going back to a demo that I already showed you? I still love that game we played and specifically the interaction with the audience, but we can still go back and finding some historical information from like 30 minutes ago. But let's say you want to find out, like, is there anything going wrong in my platform? Or like I showed you before, the high level information about performance, you selected, you drill down, showing you those nice diagrams. But the real power is up here, where out of this application insights dashboard with a lot of detailed views, it's going back to log analytics. So if I want to find out what's running behind that powerful dashboard, it's literally a powerful query. So what I'm doing here is defining the timestamp. This is for like the last couple of hours, like 30 minutes or so. If you have retention, which by the way, some setting you can define, the default retention is 90 days. So it's going to capture all the data and store it in log analytics for 90 days. But you could move it up to, I think, at least 2 or 5 years. I would need to check in our documentation, but at least 2 years. I'm quite confident it's more than that as well. You can filter like the time grain, provide me all updates, all the details with a time frame of 5 minutes, and find information about the client type, in this case being a browser because you play the game from your browser or the mobile phone, but still in a browser. But imagine that you have a more traditional client server application. It could almost be as easy as going into the client type and replacing it with some other relevant keywords. I don't have them because the game is not built for that, but that's really how it works. You could also use the pre-configured metrics here on the side, selecting them and adding them into, it's not going to work because we don't have that value, but you could just build it up from here as well. Now, we talked about Learn module all the way at the beginning of the session. We do have quite a lot of content on the Microsoft Learn platform, aka.ms/learn, where you can train yourself, get familiar with the custom query language, and coming up with a lot of super fine-grained information.
Mm-hmm. Great. So let's continue and discuss more about the objective of observability. We still have some time left, so I think it's fine. Peter, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, great. So, okay, let's imagine a scenario. Imagine that you, and later Peter will also tell us if this scenario we can have also in Azure. So, for example, say that you are a zoologist and you're observing a living organism and you look for the phenomena that constantly define its behavior. So in an information system, the only way to express behavior is digitally, so through data. And maybe more important is you want to get a clear view of the data, especially when it comes from different sources. What IT teams are looking for is representing continuously changing telemetry information into clear dashboards. So, and even outside of IT, where the business stakeholders are also validating KPIs and SLAs. And for that reason, they tend to demonstrate examples with simple eye-catching components like world maps and multicolor bar charts as shown in this screenshot in your screens. So Peter, is there something similar available in Azure?
Oh yeah, definitely. So but we already used a couple of dashboards, like App Insights was one, the network performance in Network Watcher was another one. But yeah, dashboards are, again, probably one of the easiest instruments available to present data. And I remember in the good old days, not the 25 years back, but only like a year back when we could actually still go to the office, where typically in your NOC center or your help desk developer team, where they're located in the office building, you typically see those large flat screens and showing you some really cool dashboards, like you said, providing real-time information about metrics, about logs, maybe having some nice world view map if you want to trace what's going on in the different Azure data centers all over the world. But another thing we can do with dashboards is, first of all, customizing them. So I told you with App Insights, it's based on a pre-configured dashboard, but nothing blocks you from building your own dashboards, or maybe starting from a standard dashboard that we already offer in the platform and adding your own components into it. So what I can do from here, back to the same App Insights scenario, because there's still a lot of data in there, but I could just add it and I can add a lot of other details into that. So if I want to add some, I don't know, documentation, it's supporting Markdown. So I could just drag this box, moving it somewhere in my dashboard view. I'm not having the 50-inch cool flat screens, but it should give you at least some idea. If you have HTML files, Markdown files with, I don't know, even the fire department number, that could be important if your data center on-prem gets on fire, or anything else that you want to publish there, why not? If you want to filter on other information, we have Azure Resource Graph. It's our updated view on your Azure resources. So let's move this up here, and you could make some changes. We don't need a lot of details up here. Let's say we're finished. I need to configure my tile because I selected Azure Resource Graph, where it's waiting for resources. So let's say I'm interested in the same query language, by the way, but just showing you how intuitive it could be if my browser is a bit supportive. So all Azure resources are there, so it's not limited to the ones you already have. You could also start monitoring other components, saving it, viewing the outcome, but most important, viewing the dashboard. So a lot of customization. You might have seen like a little push pin on the different parts of the Azure portal. And whenever you see the push pin, it means that you can move it to a dashboard. From here, even more mind-blowing is sharing your dashboard. So this one is already shared. Why? It's an application insights dashboard, and I wanted to share it with my developer teams. But it doesn't mean that just anyone having access to your Azure environment within the same Azure subscription can start accessing the dashboard. So there's still Azure AD-based role-based access in control, which means you can define the specific Azure AD groups or Azure AD users who get access to that dashboard view. And this could be internal Azure AD organizational users, or you could invite them out of Azure AD and still presenting it to external users as well. So that's another thing that I wanted to show you around dashboards. Do we have any other questions from the audience, maybe, before we forget about it?
Not yet. We still have 20 minutes left, so if anyone has any other question, feel free to ask us. So until then, let's continue. Now there's the last section of our session, and we're going to talk about remediation planning. So an APM platform helps cloud administrators identify problems, but it doesn't solve those problems for them. So if you know, if for example, there is a remote call to a database that takes 10 minutes longer than it should, what happened next? Do you guide your software developer colleagues towards a solution, or do you open a complaint ticket and expect them to work things out on their own? And remediation planning is the process by which you define how problems uncovered by monitoring are mitigated and resolved. So remediation can be responsive, in which case it is triggered by events surfaced by an APM, and it can be proactive, in which case the goal is to continually make improvements to a system even in the absence of errors of other critical events. And in a growing number of enterprises, remediation is no longer simply a response to a problem, because, well, nothing has to go wrong in order for something to turn out right. And
Makes sense.
And if we go a step further and talk about problem ticketing, I think Peter is great, yeah. Mm-hmm. So the work cycle of many IT departments revolves around ticketing. This is a system that automates the distribution of requests made of the IT department, so that one administrator may oversee responses to all requests in accordance with priority, necessity, and available resources. So, and many organizations invest in a ticketing system that standardizes this process, and that it's often called IT operation management. And such as suite often includes features for responding to alerts as they are generated, particularly by an APM platform. In some instances, an APM can trigger the generate problem tickets. And ticketing is useful for applying as much automation as possible and as much oversight as needed to responding to problems in applications, the network, or in an infrastructure as they occur. And great. And we still have 15 minutes left, and perhaps Peter, you can talk to us a little bit more about key performance indicators.
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, out of the monitoring information you have, so back to the metrics, the logs and traces for the more complex workloads. Like you mentioned, there's not just the idea about collecting information. We talked about log analytics allowing you to pick up information and doing something useful with it. But what does it mean to do something useful with it, right? So one of the core indicators that's going to help you in identifying how your environment is running is indeed the KPIs, the key performance indicators. So it means that anyone could tell you 100% CPU load is probably not really healthy for your server. But what about 70%? Maybe for one environment, it could be completely fine because you have so many other servers still available, or maybe you enabled scale sets in the platform. But maybe in another scenario where you only have like a handful of servers or application instances, it might mean that your system is getting overloaded, or it might be an indicator that if your average usage is like 50% all the time, and all of a sudden it goes up and moving to 70%, that could also define that something could go wrong with your server. And that's what we describe as everyday remediation. Because for a long time in the more traditional static world, if you want, it wasn't always that hard to get a view on your health state of your platform from the network all the way up to the application. Now, in today's world where organizations are moving workloads to the cloud, it's typically not a static workload anymore. You're not just going to deploy 50 servers, 500 servers, maybe a couple of thousand servers, or web applications, databases, whatnot on the platform, but you're going to rely on the elasticity, the scalability of the platform. Next to that, and again, using COVID as an interesting example, it doesn't mean that your servers, your application workload has been running healthy for the last couple of months, weeks, days, or maybe years, that it's still going to run in the same healthy state tomorrow. So you could almost say that nothing is normal anymore. I think we can all agree on that in today's world. Yeah. But it also means that at some point you need to learn about your environment. So the working knowledge, like how is my platform behaving, how is my system, my workload, my cloud, even the complete cloud scenario, how is it behaving? And allowing you to drill down and finding all those details. And then back to operations teams, back to developer teams, maybe integrating security teams, where they also should get a view almost up to the second to find out how your machines are running, how the storage is behaving, how the connectivity is working. And that's the remediation part where it's not really like, well, it's been running fine for the last couple of days. I don't need to do anything anymore, because all of a sudden there's COVID and jeopardizing your platform or forcing you to maybe open up some additional connectivity to your data center because your users are working from home or students are connecting to university platforms, and that could have some impact because you're not connecting anymore from the internal network, but connecting from the outside world. Now, we talked about it, and it's obviously an important topic, but no secrets there. We're going to show you another demo. And just do a little time check. Awesome. While I'm doing the demo, maybe Rodanthi, you can check if there's anything coming up in the chat. So the remediation is helping you fixing the problem based on a metric. So what I can do is go back to my monitor platform and using alerts. When you think about alerts, it's typically something happens and send me an email, but we can make it a lot more powerful out of Azure Monitor. So I pre-built a couple of alert rules already, and it's totally customizable. And it's refreshing to provide me the up-to-date state. There we go. So I have a rule defined, my virtual machine missiles launched. So what we're doing here is receiving a warning whenever a virtual machine is starting up. It's probably one of the easiest scenarios I could come up with. The reason why, because I don't want to find out that my virtual machines are running when I'm not using them in my training demo scenarios. So it's really that easy to start from your subscription, selecting the condition, where this one says, whenever the activity log, that's another Azure Monitor capability, it's literally active on the lowest level of the Azure platform. So when the resource provider out of the platform is telling you like, hey, I'm detecting a change in your virtual machine state. In this case, the administrative logging and the virtual machine is logging the start operation. as I defined here, for anything, all virtual machines, anywhere in my subscription, that's going to trigger the alert. Now from here, I can define actions. So the email is probably the most obvious, but it's not the only option you can go for. So you can create a new action group with some details that I'm going to save you from for now. But interesting here is action types. So you can run an automation runbook. It's a part of the Azure platform called Azure Automation, allowing you to run Python and PowerShell scripts. You can fire off an Azure function. Why not using an Azure function, integrating your familiar development language into an Azure function, and whenever an event is happening, you're going to fire off that function. Integrating with an IT service management tool. Rodanthi talked about it. If you use solutions like ServiceNow, not to do any marketing for them, but it's one of the real life experiences I had before when I was still working at a partner. We were using ServiceNow as our ticketing managing system, and there is an integration between Azure Monitor and ServiceNow and a lot of other ones. Even email could actually be used to help you integrating with your service management tool. Where next you need to define the details about your ticket. Again, I don't have the connection details, but if you want to find out more, open up Azure Monitor, go to Alerts, select ITSM, read some documentation. We do have a module on Learn how to configure it. But most important, it's not just about Azure anymore. And then last, logic apps, firing webhooks to maybe another platform, or why not pulling in events, triggers from on-prem, from cloud, and literally moving into a remediation state. Trying to take away some of the administrative overhead, I think is a nice example where, yeah, literally we're going to try to take away some of the complexity. You're not going to wait anymore until your dashboard is like completely red, or worst case, maybe even moving to purple because it's all red, and alerting your admins. You want to integrate the capabilities in the platform that's going to help you in automating and maybe even mitigating, fixing the problem by itself.
Great. So with that interesting demo, we're almost at the end of our session. Let's do a quick summary. So this module introduced the concept of using application performance monitoring platforms to continuously monitor cloud-based solutions for availability and performance. So here are some key takeaways. For example, IT systems must be monitored in order to be managed effectively. Without monitoring, administrators don't know whether their solution is performed as intended, or potentially whether it is running at all. Another key takeaway is that monitoring relies on instrumentation, which comes in three forms: logs, metrics, and traces. We talked about it in our session. APM platforms fall into two categories: agent-based and agentless. We saw some cool demos together, and also microservice-based solutions place special demands on APM platforms, and some APM tools such as Prometheus that we mentioned are engineered with these demands in mind.
Cool. And then next, we talked about a lot of other capabilities in the second part of the session, specifically covering the APM application performance monitoring or management. There's a couple of different abbreviations possible there. But the main idea is that it's coming back to all capabilities from Azure Monitor. That's our high-level entry point, giving you access to metrics, to logs, to application insights, to log analytics, to network watcher, and a lot more. And again, similar to what AWS CloudWatch is offering as well, giving you that complexity out of managing your integrated platform, enterprise-ready, hybrid, cloud-only, in whatever way you want to look at it. And next to that, providing you powerful dashboards out of the box, but also giving you interactive integration, allowing you to customize dashboards, sharing them with your peers, internal teams, maybe even outside of your technical teams.
And at last, we discussed how remediation can be used both reactive as well as proactive, making even a more powerful tool.
Awesome. Now I did a little time check, so we're gonna rush it a little bit for the last 5 minutes we do have, but everything we talked about and slightly some more detailed information that we didn't have the time to cover, it's all available on that Microsoft Learn module that we mentioned at the beginning, short link aka.ms/CMU Monitor Cloud. If you forget the short link, you know you can go to aka.ms/learn. Even if you don't know the short link anymore, just search for Microsoft Learn, whatever search tool you're going to use in your browser, and look for Monitor Cloud Resources. 6 different sections in the module that's going to cover everything that we used throughout our session.
So we have, I think, 2 minutes left. So make sure to see you all there in 26th of February in our next session. And we also want to thank you very much, the live audience, for this experience. I want to thank our expert moderators who were on the chat, and of course Peter for the amazing guidance, amazing presentation, and the assistance throughout all the session. Yes, thank you all so much.
Cool. And from my side, the same. Thank you, first of all, my audience, for the interaction all the way from the beginning, already coming up with some interesting questions, participating in the game, because without the game, there wouldn't be a lot of data to show you. And most important, I think, what Rodanthi mentioned, we do have another session coming up, February 26th, so pretty close by, where we're going to talk about security. It's not going to be us, so we do have some other presenters for that. And thank you, Rodanthi, for the good presentations, the nice interactions. You showed me some stuff in the platform that I didn't know about yet. So with that, thank you so much, and hope to see you anytime soon back on the Learn platform. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.